Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Cutting Edge Garage podcast. Today, we've got Alexander McCulloch with us from Shop Style Design. Alexander, thank you for stopping in. It's awesome to have you down here from Canada. Before we start talking about websites and everything digital, let's talk about that trip down here and how fun that was.
Yeah, well, thanks for the invite. Great to be back. The trip down was less than exciting, or less than ideal rather, and very exciting. I got stopped by your delightful customs agents who went through my phone on threat of keeping my phone if I didn't give them my passcode and let them go into a little room for 30 minutes and have their fun. Then I got hit by what I can only describe as the worst winter storm I've ever encountered in Kentucky, of all places. And that's saying something coming from Canada.
That's saying a lot. Just for the record, the Canadian border and customs is not any better than the U.S. That's still why I can't come up and visit you.
Okay, so they don't like you.
No, we have a mutual agreement that I won't come back to Canada.
That's okay. You're not really missing anything, if I'm being honest. I would much rather be here.
There you go. So, how long did it take you to get here?
So it's about a 19 and a half hour drive that I broke up across 2 days. And it took almost 22 hours, including the border trip.
What part of Kentucky did you get? Did you stay in Kentucky when you hit the storm?
So I did. I had been in Cincinnati visiting a client, and I started heading south, and the roads are crap in Cincinnati. And I made it all the way to Louisville when I said, enough's enough, and staked it out in a hotel.
Well, Louisville is the bourbon capital of the United States, so there's something to be said for that.
Yeah, no, it was. It's a nice place, and then because I delayed my trip, I ended up spending the weekend in Nashville, and I do love Nashville. Don't like country music, but love Nashville.
Awesome. So you're on your way to Hawaii.
Yes.
So why through the States to Hawaii?
Couple reasons. First is so that I could come see you and some other clients, and second is you can fly direct to Hawaii from within the U.S., and you don't have to go through the exhausting process of getting a PCR test just to board the airplane, which I would have had to if I flew out of Canada. And also, it's warm here.
Yeah, probably much warmer than it is in Canada.
So I don't know what it would have been in Fahrenheit, but it was negative 28 Celsius when I left.
You're in Toronto?
Just east of Toronto.
Ooh, that's chilly.
It is chilly, yeah. It's a different kind of cold.
So warm is relative because it's in the 40s right now. It's like 44, 45 outside, and it's almost like beach weather for you.
Yeah, I actually did consider going to the beach yesterday when I arrived. It was, yeah, I mean, it's warm here. Everyone's in sweaters, and that confuses the hell out of me, but to each their own.
Hey, this is our winter clothing. So let's talk about changes. What's happening in the technology world?
Well, I mean, the technology world's ever evolving. Google is sort of this beast that everyone has to contend with, and it changes its mind about what you should be focused on. I want to say monthly, but there are a couple sort of core fundamentals that are relatively unchanging, and that is you should have a presence on Google via Google My Business. You should update that presence. And it's just sort of the importance of having a steady stream of reviews coming in, so that you seem current. Nobody's going to make the assumption that you're closed as a garage or as a business in general. And also just so that you've got that social proof that today's consumer is looking for. One of the big things that we see, businesses of all stripes, and I could speak only to my experience with the garages in my local community, garages in particular, is there's such a reliance on referrals through word of mouth, and just people are driving by and they need an oil change, so they'll swing in and stop. And I think that that provides a real opportunity for businesses that are willing to sort of take those extra steps and establish that presence online, because it research has shown that the consumer is going to the internet first. And that's true if they're picking out a garage, if they're picking out a washing machine. It doesn't matter what the consumer is looking at. Their first stop is doing a Google search or a Bing search if they're, 70, and trying to establish who they should deal with based on the experiences of others. And that social proof is becoming increasingly important, and it's something that is often overlooked.
So how do you get, and this is something that we struggle with. We try to talk to our customers as often as we can. We put a huge focus on customer experience, which is what we refer to as our customer support team. Mm-hmm. And the reason that we refer to them as the customer experience team is because that's what I believe that they are. Our customers are going to have an experience with Cutting Edge. We want that to be a positive experience versus a negative experience. But one way or the other, they're going to have an experience. So that's their job, is to make sure that the customer has the best experience possible. That being said, we struggle with getting people to do reviews. So we have customers that will tell the tech support team, hey, it's great, it's wonderful, we love your service, you guys are the best, that kind of thing. But to actually get them to write a review is a challenge. And recently I bought some audio equipment from Crutchfield. Great company, been in business forever. And I was doing a ton of reviews because I spent a lot of money on the equipment. It's for a man cave, home theater man cave. So I read review after review after so many reviews. It was dizzying. What I found out was if you read too many reviews, it's counterproductive.
Absolutely.
But the one thing that was consistent was the reviews on Crutchfield themselves and their service. So I bought clips, speakers, and so there were. Everybody's got an opinion, right? So there were varying opinions. Vast majority were all positive. With that said, even the negative reviews, they didn't like the product, but, and they always, came with the but. As usual, Crutchfield service is awesome. They took very good care of me. I traded out for a different product, or they got the issue resolved, whatever the case may be. And when you look at their reviews, it's just thousands and thousands and thousands of reviews. How do you get that? How do you get that kind of online following that they have? Because I want it. And I'm sure that anybody listening wants it as well.
So shameless plug, that is a service that we offer at Shop Style Design. But I think that at its most fundamental core, you have to establish the expectation or the request with your customer early on. And I'm sure that both yourself and all of the listeners have experienced even something as simple as a website survey. You'll land on a website like Best Buy, for example, and they'll initiate your experience with after your session, would you be interested in filling out a short survey to let us know how the website experience was? And so by establishing early on that you're going to be looking for that feedback, not only do you have the benefit of collecting it down the road, but you tell your customer right at the outset that you care what their experience is, and good or bad, you're looking for their feedback. And that, as a initial starting point, already puts people at ease, not only because they understand that you care, but they understand that you're going to be soliciting feedback from everybody, which means it provides validity to the reviews that you do have, however few or numerous they may be. So I would say that sort of establishing that expectation early on with your customers, how you collect them is largely irrelevant at this point. It's just establishing that you will be collecting them. Okay. In terms of customer engagement, obviously your customer experience team does a great job. I've seen your reviews. I've seen the feedback that's come through your website. And I've seen the commentary on the online forums, because we do a bit of brand management for you guys, just to sort of keep an eye on what people are saying. So you're doing a great job, but obviously, as we've spoken about before, you're not seeing those high volume of reviews coming in. And so It's about establishing an automated process that reaches out to your customers, initiates that review process with them, and makes it as straightforward as possible. The biggest stopping block to collecting reviews, getting that reputation feedback from your customers, is typically a person's only going to be motivated enough to leave a review if they feel exceptionally strongly, either positively or negatively. And generally it's negatively. If you're not soliciting a review, if somebody's coming just to leave you a review, generally it's because they've had a bad experience, either through something that's happened or because it just wasn't the right product for them. And that's their sort of inciting incident. That's their motivation to leave that review. And so it's important that you're actively soliciting via an automated process. It can be emails, it can be SMS. We do recommend a digital form of communication for them because you're able to make that process easy. You're able to reach out, you're able to provide a quick link, click here to leave a review, and then you're not directing them to sort of the abyss where they get to select which platform they're leaving a review on. Depending on the nature of your business, you're either going to want a Google review or a Facebook review. Garages, shops, businesses with an actual brick and mortar location, Google's where your reviews need to be. That's where people are finding you. If you're sort of an online e-commerce retail merchant, Facebook's a great avenue for that. Because that's where their customers are likely to engage with them. They're not going to look them up in Google because they know they have a digital presence, not a physical presence. And so as a follow-up to that, I think that the other thing to note here is don't chase Yelp reviews. Yelp is a beast in the industry, and they will hold you hostage if you start trying to collect reviews from them. So that is my sort of one thing to keep in mind as you're going down this journey is just sort of ignore Yelp, because they will try and take you for every penny you've got. And they do it through some very underhanded approaches, unlike Google and Facebook, which will publish the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Okay.
So for us, when we're trying to actively solicit reviews for a client, we have a couple different avenues that we go down. The first is we set an automatic reminder up, triggers an email out to a customer after confirmation has been received that they've got their product. That's something we see often is people are really eager to get that review, and they'll trigger it before people get their product, thinking, okay, well, they'll come back after they get it. And what happens is the person sees it, they say, oh yeah, I'm going to do that. And then their product arrives, and good or bad, they've completely forgotten that they were going to leave a review.
Or UPS damages it, and it's a negative review that you had no control over.
Absolutely. Or, and this is my personal favorite, United States Postal Service says we've delivered it, and we have no idea where it's actually gone, because where they delivered it to is not where anybody's living.
It's shocking.
Yeah.
It's absolutely shocking. Yeah. I can't imagine why they're losing money.
I know. It's just such a beautifully run business. I think it's a postal service, the postal service thing. It seems to be true in Canada too.
The only branch of the federal government that generates a revenue instead of taking money from someone else, and they're losing money and going bankrupt. It's a beautiful thing.
It is. It is.
So a little bit different. So let me ask you this before we start talking about specifically more brick and mortar shop type information. How much is too much?
So it depends on the form of communication you're taking. And it depends how it fits into your broader marketing approach, because these are the same people that you're actively soliciting sales from. So you don't want to overload them with communication. So the sweet spot for SMS, be it marketing, be it follow-up for reviews, etc., is 2 times a week. Your return on that investment for SMS, be it having them fill out a review, come to your website, make a purchase, book an appointment at your garage for an oil change, whatever it may be, that peaks at 8 texts a month. Any more than that, and your return just sort of is stagnant, and at 15, people start to drop off and unsubscribe. And so that's sort of the standard for SMS. Email, you've got a little more flexibility with, but the trick is if you become a daily occurrence in your customers' inboxes, they'll tune you out. And if they tune you out long enough, Google will start dropping you right in the spam folder. So for emails, you're typically wanting 1 to 2 a week as well. But you don't want to do both at the same time on the same day, because again, you'll end up getting ignored. As far as how many reviews are too many, it's not a high end or low end. Like it's okay if you've got 2 reviews and it's okay if you've got 22,000 reviews. The trick is that you want them spread out, because what happens is the consumer is smart and they know that if they come to your website and this week you've got 30 reviews and then you get no reviews for the next 2 years, first instinct is, okay, well, they got 30 of their friends to leave reviews. Second instinct is, well, what happened at the time since they got these reviews that nobody's leaving them anymore? Has it gone downhill? And so you're not really striving to strike I need this many reviews. It's having a continuous flow of reviews coming in from customers, ideally as a shop owner for different services. Because what you don't want to end up, unless you are an oil changers, is you don't want to end up in a situation where all of your reviews speak to one service. You do want to craft your review request and approach in a way that, as you said for Crutchfield, it doesn't matter what the service was, they're reviewing the business and their experience. And that's really what any shop and any business as a whole should be striving for.
Yeah, and unsolicited, right? So it's not part of the review that they're asking for is on the product itself. So all of these reviews on the company are a byproduct of that review, the positive reviews as well. Mm-hmm. I didn't really put a statistic to it, but I would venture a guess that probably 60% of their reviews, positive or negative, speak to their outstanding customer service.
Yeah, and that's exactly what you want, because that's what gives anyone as a consumer confidence in giving their money to that business. Because good or bad on the product front, they know they'll be taken care of and a solution will be found so that their overall experience leads them to come back in the future. So
there's been some changes to Shopify recently, right? Any of those that would impact in a positive way the shop owners out there listening to this?
Yeah, so Shopify has actually put a lot of research and development money into their brick and mortar shop, restaurant, store support side. Their retail solutions now that connect to your website allow customers to book services online based on your availability in your calendar, complete their transaction either online or in store, have really come to the forefront of the marketplace. And so what we're seeing with brick and mortar businesses as a whole is, you've got 2 types of businesses. You've got the type that doesn't have a website or has that yellow pages listing that they've had for forever. And they're in there with their 30-year-old credit card machine and they're taking payments that way. And there's no reporting, there's no visibility of trends, there's no integration with accounting software. And then we're seeing businesses that are recognizing the efficiencies that come from working within a connected suite. And Shopify, everyone typically tends to think of them exclusively as if you're selling things online, you want Shopify. And while that's true, if you've got a brick and mortar location and you're offering services to consumers, they are a premier option. The back-end interface is easy to use. It's easy to add your products, your services, and it's easy to connect it to the tools that you're using to track the health of your business.
Gotcha. So staying in contact with the customer, with the SMS and everything else, if you're a sole proprietor or even an LLC, but single member LLC, a lot of these business owners are going to be short on staff. How do you tackle the staying relevant in the digital space and at the same time not sacrificing your core business, which is the walk-in and so you're wanting this to be a complement or a growth or a scaling opportunity, not a distraction from actually taking care of the customers that you already have. So how do you get that done when you're a small company?
And I think that this question's broader than just the IT interacting digitally marketing to your consumer. If you're a small business owner, there are hundreds of distractions that come up over the course of a year that can pull your attention from what you're what your core specialty is and what your biggest value to your business is. And so there are a couple approaches that we always recommend whenever we're speaking with a small business owner. And that is, first, understand what your benefit is or where your value is. Because likely if you are a sole proprietor, you're running a garage, you're interacting with your customers that are coming through the door, you're doing the work, your skill set's likely not in digital marketing. And while you can take the time and the effort to learn how to do it, as you know, as any of your listeners know, as a garage owner, I mean, I can learn how to do an oil change, but I'm never going to do it as well as a garage. And that's why I pay a garage to do my oil changes. And in the same way, a garage owner is likely never going to be able to do the digital marketing, the review and reputation management, collection, as well as a trained professional. And so we typically would recommend, when you're looking to establish that digital presence, work with somebody that has those skill sets. If, however, you're like many business owners and you want to do it all yourself, there are ways that you can automate that process. There are tools available, and I'm sure, Lee, you can drop a link in the description of this episode and can provide some information on where to find those tools for your listeners.
Bill, you're going to update the link, right?
I'll do it.
All
okay.
Right. So the key is really to automate as much as possible, be it social media creation, creating posts on a weekly or a monthly basis, collecting reviews, sending out follow-ups. One of the big things that we see is with any of the garages, at least in our area, and granted, I'm in Canada and we do things a little weird there, as I'm sure all of your listeners know. But the only time I ever...
Truckers finally stood up, though, didn't they?
Yeah, they don't do things
Hell yeah.
weird. They do things right. It's the rest of us that need to catch up.
Yep.
And don't...
Your PM is up there scratching he's probably vacationing in Florida, so he doesn't have to wear a mask. But once he gets back, he's going to be scratching his head trying to figure out how do I fix this problem?
Oh, he's not coming back. He's hiding. I died laughing the other day. He made a comment about one of our Olympians won the third medal, first skier to ever do it from Canada, win 3 medals. And one of the comments on the article was that if they were giving out medals for avoiding your job, he'd take gold every day. And they said, stop watching the Olympics and maybe try managing the country. And I just don't think he's got it
It's
in
boring.
him. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It's much more boring. It's entirely too difficult.
Exactly. But no, as I was saying, like the thing that we see is really lacking, and I'll speak to my personal experience. Like I drive a Dodge. My wife drives a Chrysler. We don't often get our vehicles serviced at the manufacturer, but the manufacturer is the only person that routinely follows up with us to come in and get our vehicle serviced. It doesn't matter that I haven't had an oil change from our Dodge dealer since I drove my truck off the lot. They're the ones that follow up with me. And they do it via letter mail because who knows? They like paying for stamps, I guess.
They actually send you
a letter.
A letter.
Absolutely. Based on how much they assume I drive, they'll send me a letter every time I should get my oil change done.
It's the only reason that the Canadian Postal Service is still in business.
Oh, no, you'd think that, but like yours, ours is a nationalized company, Canada Post is, and the key difference is that when you live in a semi-socialist country like I do, we'll keep funneling money into them until they're well past their best before date. And they're all unionized, so of course they're on strike every 3 years, but that's neither here nor there. It's a different world.
That's funny.
It's a different world. But yeah, so like that's a real opportunity that not a lot of shops are taking advantage of. And part of it's because there's no centralized tracking, and that's something that working with a tool like Shopify allows you to do. You can see the history of services that have been purchased by your customer, and you can send automated prompted follow-ups reminding the customer that now would be a good time to come back in for this, or maybe it's winter's coming and you don't live in Alabama and it's time to get your winter tires.
Can you do it time-based as well, based on
Absolutely.
Last visit, things like this?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you can set up all sorts of different triggers. You can do it based on the time since their last visit. You can do it on the season, the month. Really, the sky's the limit in terms of the automations that you can set up to keep that communication with your customer built. And the nice thing is that for a shop, for a retail brick and mortar business, you don't have to constantly change what those communications are because they're relatively static. So while there's a bit of a process to set it up initially, it really is a set it and forget it, at least for the short term. But that's only available to you if you take that time and you transition over to tools and technologies that are going to allow you to grow within the current environment.
So I think one of the things that holds the average small business owner back from this is the intimidation and the assumption that I can't afford to do this and I can't afford to pay somebody to do this. So let's talk about what does it cost and what is the return on investment if you're doing it properly. So if I'm a single member LLC, I've got a couple of guys working in the shop, maybe somebody at the counter and me. What is the cost to build that automotive repair type website? What's the cost to maintain it and do the brand and reputation management?
So while I can't give you a cost just because there are so many variables associated with it, what we've consistently found, and Lee, I think you can speak to that, is it's generally less than you're expecting it to be.
Yep.
And the other thing is that you asked, they're thinking or people are questioning, can I afford to do this? And I think that in 2022, the reality is that if you want your business to grow and thrive, particularly in the current and upcoming economic climate, you can't really afford not to. The time where you can continue to thrive on status quo is rapidly disappearing. And for businesses that want to grow, and some not, the other thing in all of this is not everybody wants to be in a consistent state of growth. There are business owners that hit their stride and that's sort of all they're looking for. And what I'm talking about is not really geared towards those business owners, but business owners that want to grow, they want to knock out the competition locally. They want to make sure that they're going to be well regarded in their local communities. And the first name that people think of when they think, I have a broken air conditioner, where do I go? And I say that speaking from experience because when I tried to get my air conditioner repaired on our Dodge Grand Caravan, it became abundantly clear that I couldn't find a shop in my area that did it, and I just got rid of the vehicle because it was too much hassle.
That's crazy. Well, it's only a 30-day window, too, in Canada. Other than that, you just roll the window down.
See, you
the heater's much more important.
It is. The heater is far more important because we do get about 8 months of winter. At least it feels that way. But we get summer the same way you do. Like, again, I don't know what the conversion is to Fahrenheit, but this summer when I was at the beach, it was 35 degrees Celsius. So
that would be, it's double plus 20, plus or minus. So 70, that's 90 degrees.
Yeah. I mean, it's not the 108 it was here, but it's still warm. It's warm enough. You need that air conditioner.
Absolutely.
Even if it is just for 2 weeks.
That's right. That's right.
And so,
so you actually got rid of a car because
Absolutely.
You couldn't find anybody to service the air conditioning.
Yep, I did. I absolutely did. Because it was a rolling black rectangle and it was hot. And I have 2 kids and there was no way I was sitting in the back of that because I wasn't sitting in the front. And so, I'm not, while it may seem extreme, as a consumer, I'm not that out of the ordinary. What I'll say is that for your listeners, for the shop owners, for you who runs an automotive repair equipment business, you don't think of the hassle that goes into getting something like that repaired. But if it's going to take me 6 hours to identify who can fix my vehicle, it's not worth it because I don't have time to go through that hassle. And I think that that's more and more true for today's consumer, particularly the consumers that you want to target. And I'm not talking about targeting the consumers that are going to be coming in looking for payment plans. I'm talking about targeting the consumers that want a quick, easy repair to their vehicle and to know that moving forward, when the shit hits the fan and something's broken, they know who to go to. Because the certainty that comes with having a reliable, qualified garage that you can contact is huge.
So was the problem the fact that there were no shops, or you just didn't have a way of finding them?
Couldn't identify them. There were lots of shops, and I'll admit I called a couple, and one of them only did oil changes. One of them didn't service Dodge products. I don't know why.
Well, if you look it up in the dictionary, it does say to avoid.
Well, it might, but I love my Ram. Love my Ram. Though, admittedly, I did buy it.
They even changed the name. That's
I know
it's
they
not
did.
a Dodge anymore, it's a Ram.
And I'll be the first person to admit that it was not my first choice. I really wanted a GMC, and it just wasn't worth $26,000 more to me than the Dodge was.
GM is emotionally attached to their stuff. They are.
Yeah.
For sure.
But yeah, so it was as simple as the few garages that had an established presence hadn't optimized it. I got through calling a few. Nobody mentioned air conditioning in their Google My Business profile, and I saw some websites that were vaguely reminiscent of when I built my first website in 1998 in grade 7. And because that's the way it's been. That's how it operated, and there hasn't been sort of that imperative to change up until now.
I'm guilty of that myself. I don't know if you remember that, or did he even see our original website?
I did, yes.
The original.
Oh no, I didn't see that.
Yeah, that's so. If you thought that one was bad, you should have saw the one I did after a beer or 5 on a weekend.
Well, but I think that illustrates that just because you have some skills doesn't mean you have the ability to tackle any project.
I am a face-to-face sales guy, and preferably a face-to-face technical sales guy. I like to talk about technical equipment with customers. Digital marketing, I should never touch.
And I'm sure John and Bill would definitely agree to that.
Definitely. And when I do start throwing that monkey into the wrench, they quietly and professionally ask me to step aside and let the professionals handle this.
Yeah. No, that's good. It's good, though, that they're able to tell you that, because I think that what I've seen in my experience, and we work with businesses of really every nature, is that not everybody has the people around them to tell them that maybe you should work with somebody that knows what they're doing on this. And so, what I'll say is it's oftentimes cheaper to pay somebody to do it right the first time than to blow a bunch of hours, time and effort trying to do it yourself, only to have to pay somebody to fix it. And I think that's true for garages too, because I've seen people that have tried to repair their lower ball joints and then their tire is no longer attached to their car on the side of the highway.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not as easy as it looks.
It's not. It's a skill, and there's a reason that hiring within what we do is very difficult, because it takes a certain kind of person. It takes an attention to detail. And it takes a comfort in being uncomfortable, because it's ever changing. Before we jumped on this, you said one of the things at Cutting Edge is the only thing that's true is that change is always happening, because you're always striving to do better, to be better, to provide a better customer experience, to introduce new tools, to identify the best way to support your listeners and your customers. And, technology requires that the same way as your business requires that. It's just in a very different stream, and it's more of a soft skill than a physical product. So I think that for your listeners, what I would say is if you're wanting to get started, absolutely check out the link that's below the podcast, and I'll share that to John or Bill with you guys after. Understand what's available to you, and it doesn't have to be us. Reach out to somebody that you feel comfortable with, just to understand what your options are. Because, what I'll say is not everybody needs the same selection of products, the same look and feel, because every community is different. And, that's particularly true for local businesses like garages, because what works in Manhattan is not going to work here in Alabama.
Nope.
Because you're talking to a different customer base who are using technology differently. And so to try and pigeonhole yourself as a business into a pre-built package is not going to benefit you. It's going to be very frustrating for you, and it's likely not going to get you the return on investment you're looking for. You asked earlier on, what the return on investment looks like. And so typically, I'll speak to SMS marketing because I think that's one of the more fundamental areas that's going to be relevant to a shop owner, because it's a way to communicate regularly, both for if you're running a promo or if you're sending somebody back a notice to come back for their oil change, or my favorite, to get their lug nuts tightened after you've rotated their tires. Because I cannot tell you the number of times that I've forgotten to do that because nobody's reminded me. And so, the return on ad spend for SMS marketing is typically 5 to 7 times.
Okay.
Yeah. For reference, text message costs you between 5 and 7 cents. Tire rotation, I don't know what it costs here. When I get my tires rotated, it costs me $89. If it can remind me to come in and do that, that's a pretty solid return on investment.
I don't think it's that much here. I could be wrong, but who knows? I have actually never paid to have my tires rotated, so I don't know.
I'll be honestly, I'd be a little concerned if you had.
Yeah, well, yeah, me too.
What I will say,
I am a shop's worst nightmare. There's nothing worse than the professional patient. It's the psychiatrist that goes to another psychiatrist to get help. Literally, you don't want me in your shop. I'm going to tell you everything that you're doing wrong and why you should do it different, and you're going to beg for me to leave.
Well, I'm going to correct you, Lee. There is one thing worse than that. And that's the person that thinks they're a professional patient and has absolutely no idea what they're talking about.
I'll give you that.
And those are the people we typically get to deal with.
So they call you because they don't know what they're doing, but they start the conversation with, let me tell you what I want you to do.
Exactly. This is what we need to do. Well, maybe let's just sort of assess the business and understand what your current state is so that we can understand what you need to do. And more times...
So you don't look at them and say, so how's that working for you right now?
I don't. Only because that does tend to shut down the conversation.
Note to self, don't do that.
And more times that I can count, the person has come in thinking they need more than they do. You don't need a world-class website that changes images and you update weekly and it's truly interactive and you can 3D surround your car as they're working on it. Like, there are certain things that you need. There are certain things that are good to have. And then there are certain things that nobody needs to have. And unfortunately, when we end up encountering people that are the non-professional professional patient, they typically think they need the things that nobody needs. And so, and I'm sure that's true for automotive as well. I absolutely need the shiny lug nuts. Well, do you though? Because the regular lug nuts work just fine. And so it becomes sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy for people that come into it with that mindset, because they're driving this understanding that it's going to be expensive. And so they strive to make it expensive to validate their assumptions. And it doesn't need to be cost prohibitive. It shouldn't be cost prohibitive. But doing nothing is going to result in nothing. And I think that's where we're at in 2022. And we've seen that trend accelerated by COVID as people are changing the way they consume content and the way they procure it, procure services. And it really has been accelerated by, you've had to deal with less of it than we have, but by the restrictions that have come through on a rotating basis, really globally.
Really depends on where you are. There's, in the U.S. with COVID, we're all over the map.
Yeah.
For the most part, the state of Alabama decided not to participate.
Yeah.
In all of the craziness, whether that's a good decision, bad decision. In the moment, you don't know. So when you have the benefit of hindsight, it's easier to Monday morning quarterback than it is to play the game. So looking back, we came through it fine. We had minimal lockdowns, and those that we did have, nobody paid attention to. Conversely, you go to places like Michigan, California, New York, massive lockdowns. And I'm sure had a major impact to the business, of anybody, running a shop or something like that, essential or not. It still hampers the effectiveness of running the business.
Well, and it does. And, we're still dealing with lockdowns in Canada.
Really?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Restaurants are still capped at 50% of capacity. You need to be fully vaccinated to enter. You need to wear a mask until your drinks hit the table.
So did you see the study that Johns Hopkins just came out with?
I did not.
And Johns Hopkins was a big fan of the lockdowns and everything else. So they did, their study concluded that that the lockdowns had effectively no impact on COVID mortality. Something like 0.02%, and even at that, had to be taken in context. So, kind of like I said, it's always easy to Monday morning quarterback. Could have very easily been the other way. Could have been 30, 40%, impact of, lockdowns being positive. So when you have those studies, why is it so difficult for people to back off and change? Actually, we're not going to go there. We're not going to digress into a COVID conversation.
I will happily fall down this rabbit hole with you.
I'm not Joe Rogan with $100 million Spotify contract. They will cancel me.
True story.
Guaranteed.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I digress. We'll go back to what we started this conversation on, and we'll talk about digital. So break down for the viewers and listeners that don't really know what My Google Business is, and full transparency, I don't really understand it either. It's a phrase that I'm familiar with, but actually understanding what it is, what it means,
for sure,
why it's important. Break that down for the layman.
I will, and I'll also talk a little bit about sort of the order in which things are a priority. So Google My Business is quite simply whenever you go to conduct a web search to find a garage, a mechanic, whatever it may be, and you type that into Google, it's what populates those local businesses on the right-hand side of your search browser that says, Joe's Auto Shop on Main Street is open from this time to this time. Their phone number is this. Their website is this. And then it lists the reviews, whatever it may be. And I think that, you're probably familiar with what that experience is. There are two ways that your business ends up there. The first way is that somebody else enters it. You have no control over it, and it becomes a dormant listing where it looks like you're not actually in business when you're in business. And that's where most local businesses sit. They've got a listing, but they don't control it. They have no oversight over it. And it just ends up being populated by whoever stumbles across it. And the other way is to create that listing, verify your ownership of it with Google. It's a very seamless process. It's easy to do. And then you get to go in there and establish your hours. You get to set your phone number. You get to populate your website information. And this is also where, for your listeners, you're most likely to be trying to drive your review traffic when you're reaching out to your consumers.
Okay.
Couple other perks are you can update your holiday hours in there, which, for better or worse, allows you to stand out from the businesses that don't, because it provides a certain degree of confidence for your consumers. You can also post notifications in there if you've got new services, whatever the case may be, and then that populates for anybody that's looking for a business in Google. And ultimately, if you want to capitalize on that within your local market, you want to be in the top 3. The number of people that communicate outside of the top 3 drops significantly by more than 70%. So you want to be in the top 3. And the primary benefit to this is it allows you to communicate. If you're looking up this business listing on your phone as a consumer, it allows you to one-touch connect with the business via either their phone or their website. And that's just not a service or an ease of use that you're afforded as a business anywhere else. So as a first step...
And it's free.
As a first step, establishing that, taking ownership of your business listing in Google, and making sure you populate it with up-to-date and accurate information. I mean, I would encourage your listeners to do that today.
Bill, are we doing that?
John?
It's funny.
Oh,
Lee.
my.
It's funny.
Oh,
Lee.
my.
We've talked about this.
You would think that 2 of the guys from my marketing, 2 of the 3 guys out of our marketing team, one of them would have had a for sure yes or no.
Well, I can help.
Instead of looking at each other.
Well, I was actually thinking about the Joe Rogan comment earlier and how I can take that clip and put it into a video. So I actually missed the question, but I will.
We were both out of that conversation.
Cut, edit. So are we in control of, are we in control of, and are we updating our My Google business page?
Yes and no. You're in control of it, but you're not leveraging it to its full capacity, which is a conversation that I'm hoping we can have.
We're going to have that.
Yeah. Particularly for you because you're managing multiple brands.
And these guys are like, thanks for stopping in, Alexander. Really appreciate that.
To be fair, I think they're both aware of it and have mentioned it, at least in passing to you.
They should be mentioning what they did, not the... Shouldn't be a question form. It should be a statement.
Fair enough. But no. So, and I would think that for your listeners, that would be step 1.
Okay.
Step 2 is an honest assessment of their website. I think that for service-based businesses, it's really easy to take a look at your website and go, it's fine. But take the time to assess whether that's actually fine.
I think it's important for people to... It's easy for a shop owner that does a really good job to say my website's fine. For one, their business is likely healthy.
Yep.
So this isn't about getting your business healthy. This is about scaling and growing the business and getting all of the market share that you want to get in your local community. I think it's more important to look at that from the perspective of the customer.
Absolutely.
So the same way that if you're a shop owner, for example, if I was a shop owner, I want to look at that in the same way that I look at Crutchfield when I'm going to go buy stereo equipment, right? Versus Audio Source was the number 2 company in terms of who I was going to buy from. And it was a toss-up back and forth, in a previous experience with Crutchfield early on in my career. Turner Wrenches was why I went with them. But it was down to those 2 companies. Paying attention to my experience as a consumer, I think is important because if not, I look at it from being inside the business, not looking from the outside in, and that's what our customers are doing.
And that's exactly it. And one of the things that we see happen all the time with business owners that drive their website creation and content exclusively is you're more often than not, as you're saying, not paying attention to the consumer. So it's not only that the information on the website's not necessarily super relevant to the consumer, but it's not written in a digestible way. And so that's the other piece is if your website looks great and makes perfect sense to you as a shop owner, maybe have somebody that doesn't have your same background knowledge, not only as a shop owner, but of what those services are. Take a look through and see if they can understand the content of your site. I can go into the importance of readability ratings and audits, etc. But we won't do that. That's a conversation for another day. But just in terms of doing an initial assessment of your site and then working with a professional to have it audited and identify where the gaps are. We do audits for free. We encourage every business that operates in the same space as we do to do an audit for free, just because it really is the first step to understanding where the business's website is lacking, and also whether you as an agency are the best fit to resolve it. Because there are niches that we don't work with just because we're ill-equipped for it. For example, medical products, and anything that's targeting the medical vertical, we don't touch because we're not qualified or capable to speak to that audience or to interact with that audience in a meaningful way. And so I would encourage anybody looking to have their website reviewed, work with somebody that takes a similar approach, because not everybody can do everything, nor should they. And then the other piece following that is then once you've got a good, healthy ownership of your Google business listing and you're confident in your website, it's not until that point that you really want to start with digital marketing, be it email marketing, text marketing, or social media marketing, which I don't recommend for local businesses, because you've got to have somewhere to drop those consumers. And it really becomes a chicken or an egg scenario, because you can have the best marketing in the world, but if you're dropping them on a hard to interact with website that doesn't have a clear call to action, you might as well just flush that money down the toilet. And so that's the other thing to be aware of, is there is a hierarchy here in terms of priority, and it's important not to lose sight of that.
So take control of your Google My Business page.
Yep.
Seek out and find someone to audit your website and point out the things that are lacking.
Yep.
Things that you're doing well that could be done a little bit better. And then execution. And execution should come with a plan. The partner that you're working with, or if you're doing it yourself, you should have a 30, 60, 90 plan to understand how it's going to roll out. And particularly as a shop owner, you're going to want something, be it on your business card, etc., that you could hand out to your consumers that reference at least for the review and reputation piece, reference the initiatives that you're undertaking, so that every touch point you have with your consumers has a clear and intentional purpose. So would it be fair to say that this is probably one of the most impactful things that you can do relatively inexpensively to work on the business instead of in the business?
Absolutely. And that's for the lion's share of business owners. The goal is to work on the business, not in the business, and unless you own a Subway franchise. And so this is one of the easiest, lowest cost initiatives you can take to scale your business in such capacity that it becomes your retirement plan, not your work to the grave plan.
Perfect. So how do people reach out to you, Alexander?
So the easiest way to get in touch with us is shopstyledesign.com, and we will make sure that that's in the podcast link. We actually did...
Are you sure? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sure about that.
Okay,
Yeah.
positive.
Last time I was on here, we offered a bit of a promo at that link, and we'll do the same here. We did have some garages reach out and take advantage of that, and the results have been positive. And so we'll offer the same thing again here. But yeah, absolutely. If there's one takeaway from this, even if you want to spend exactly zero money, that's okay. Just make sure that you take ownership of your Google My Business listing so that you're able to capitalize on that resource that is readily available, because your competitors will.
Yeah, they certainly will.
Yeah.
So my takeaways from this are it's important to your business to make sure that you're relevant in a digital space, especially today with COVID and people's buying motives and investigations, if you will, into who they're going to give their business to have changed a lot because of COVID, especially depending on where you are. It's really important to be able to speak to your customers in a digital way that builds confidence in your business. And Alexander with Shop Style Designs has done a great job with Cutting Edge and with the SB Tools brand. He manages all of our websites and does a lot of our brand management as well. Strongly recommend that you guys reach out to him, and hopefully you've taken something away from this. And we'll see you again soon in the Cutting Edge Garage.